Welcome back, everyone, to the Learn Like a CPA show. Special podcast today. We just wrapped up the largest short-term rental conference, arguably probably of this year. Been over 1,100 people at the conference. We had the industry's leading experts in teaching in their specific niches. I mean, we had people run how to run hotel deals. We talked about marketing. We talked about design. We talked about understanding your consumer sentiment. We talked about the impact, achieving financial freedom for your family, and so you can get out of the job that you hate and that you can retire early. We are going to be filming with some people and trying to share and get some insights from people from the conference, so stick around. Hey guys, before we get started today, I wanted to thank everybody who's involved with putting on a conference here this weekend. You know, we had over 1,100 people at the conference. We want to, of course, thank our title sponsor, STR Insights. We want to thank active duty military, first responders, healthcare professionals for doing what they do so that we all can come together and do what we love to do. We want to thank all the vendors for helping us be able to fund and put on the event. And of course, we want to thank everybody that came. I mean, it was absolutely amazing to see people from all walks of the country to come together for this conference over the last few days. And so I want to give a special shout out to everybody and stay tuned for this podcast today, guys.
Hi, my name is Isra. I go by Izzy and I'm from Chicago.
Hey, so welcome. So can you share your background with the audience before we kind of get started a little bit?
Yeah, so I actually just got started in the STR space about 8 months ago. And before that, I was in social media marketing. I was a travel blogger before that. But this is a space that I definitely feel like it's so scalable. It's so fun. You can be creative. And it's just, there's so much going on. And you're always learning something new. And hospitality is just an amazing industry to be in. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing.
And so in 8 months, where are you at now? What is your portfolio?
Yeah, so I have 4 arbitrage units. One of them, I have a 50-50 partnership on a luxury home. And now we're getting into equity. So we're trying to own as much as property as possible.
And you talked about your past experience with digital marketing and social media. How do you see that play into the short-term rental space? Like using your background to succeed in this space?
So to be honest, I haven't been able to transfer it over. And I think that's actually one of the biggest things that I learned from this conference is that, you know, you need to focus on direct booking eventually. And that's how you can really maximize your revenue. And you can do that by utilizing social media and doing Google ads. So those are all things I already have experience with, but I just wasn't thinking about it because I was just trying to set up the systems and get everything going and scale quickly as possible. But sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. So I think that's why
And we chatted briefly, and if I recall correctly, you said you've never done direct booking.
No, I've never done. So the only direct bookings I've done so far, my properties have been guests that already stayed. They loved it, and they texted me like, "Hey, we're trying to come back and stay," and that's when I did a direct booking. So they're just repeat customers.
And we learned from Bill Faith that it is 7 times easier to sell something to somebody who's already bought a product or service to you. So have you been have you been running ads to your people who have already booked at your place?
You know what? I think that is one of probably the biggest mistakes is that I didn't start with capturing emails from the beginning. But that's also something I'm definitely going to implement and take more seriously because from how easy it was from them coming back to me, I know like to get people to rebook, it would be much easier. So if you're actually intentional about it.
Okay. So this is going to be a really short podcast here. Give us your biggest takeaway, highest takeaway. I know there's so many things, but you have one thing that it's like, I need to get this done absolutely ASAP.
Yeah. So I think I already mentioned like the direct booking, being able to focus on that a little bit more and implement that into your strategy. But also I would, when Michael Scrogan was talking about the Freedom Code and
Yes.
he was talking about just being very intentional with your time and like he doesn't answer phone calls very easily. And I feel like I'm at the beginning stage of the code that he broke down, solopreneur-ish. So that's something that I think everyone should work on is just being more protective of your time and making sure that you're putting it into the right places of your business to grow it and eventually get to a position where it's true financial freedom. You're not checking your phone, you're spending time with your family, because that's ultimately why I'm doing this. So
yeah,
I'm trying to get there too.
Yeah, and I chatted briefly with Peter from my media team, and we saw this tweet that came up the other day, and it's you want to be available to everybody, but also not really.
Yeah.
So you want the world to think that you're available, right? So for me, that's like the social media, the podcast, like you see me doing the thing every single day, but I don't answer this thing. Like you have to have a scheduled time for me. I actually only take calls 1 day a week. I only take calls 1 day a week because the thing rings and it's distracting and it, you know, in fact, it actually takes you on average 17 minutes to regain focus from what you were doing when you get distracted. So if I'm working and if I'm thinking about something and this thing rings and I get distracted, it takes 17 minutes for me to come back and get refocused.
Yes, that's I think that's very, very smart. Everyone should be doing this. So, but yeah, it's good to know that you're still accessible when I hit you up for questions and things like that. I'm the exception, but yeah.
So was there anything else in Michael's that you enjoyed? Michael Strogan's presentation?
I mean, I also really liked how he talked about boutique hotels, and this is a trend that I've been noticing. A lot of STR people are getting into the boutique hotel space, and I didn't really try to understand that at the time because, again, I was just focused on like the things that I had to accomplish right in front of me. But hearing him talk about how you have this forced appreciation, and then eventually you can sell the hotel for 4 or 5, even 10 times the amount that you bought it and put money into it. So that's just something really interesting. And I'm a traveler, so I've stayed in many experiential hotels. So I feel like that's definitely something long term I'm going to always be like looking out for, because I know like from my travel experiences, we can implement a lot of these cool things into boutique hotels.
And that was one of my biggest takeaways from his presentation is the number one thing he actually looks at is how can I pay my investors back the quickest.
Oh, yeah.
And with hotels and commercial real estate, it gets easier to do that than it is if you're just taking down single family homes.
Yes. Because there's only so much you can appreciate on a property, but on a hotel, there's so many value adds you can continue to put into it. And then obviously like raising the occupancy rate and creating the optimizing your systems. It's the same thing with STR, but just like on steroids, I guess you can say. So yeah, and of course investors are key. If they're the ones helping you build it up, always got to keep those people in mind. So that's how we operate as well.
So where can listeners find you on social media? What's next for you?
Yes. Okay. So, guys, we are focusing on, actually now we're going to be building up a social media for a new property. We're going to be setting up soon in the Miami area. So you guys can follow along that journey. I'm going to be recording the whole process, but you can find me on Instagram at Isra Izzy, ISRAAIZZY, and TikTok Wealth with Izzy. I have to work on my handles, land. There's too many fake accounts out there. But...
And what was crazy is, what was the first thing I told you when we first connected back in, what was it, December? Neston, remember?
You told me a lot of things.
Remember I said change your name?
Yes, okay, I tried. Honestly, I tried. It's just really hard out there with the fake accounts, guys. So make sure it's the right one. Isra Izzy, okay?
Can you share your experience, your background, and kind of why you got into the space and where you're here for the events?
Absolutely. So, name's Billy Withers. I have been helping real estate investors my whole career. I'm a tax and accounting professional, so I help investors save every single year is my goal. And what got me into the space is just I really enjoy doing that, and obviously kind of happened into it. But I've learned and grown so much over the years. And when short-term rentals really started booming a few years back, I kind of took it upon myself to help as many investors as I can in that respect. So I've just been learning and growing, and had to come to this conference to kind of share what I know and meet more people.
And this was your first short-term rental conference?
First short-term wealth conference. I'm really glad I came. Met a ton of people, and
I hate to break it to you, but you're going to be extremely disappointed if you go to any other one, because I don't think there's anything that could blow this out of the water. So can you? What was your biggest takeaway? Like, give me like a one.
Biggest takeaway was just that, I think a lot of investors still need help in the bookkeeping and strategy space. Listening to Jeff, the STR law guy, was great. He shared a lot of knowledge that I think is going to be very valuable, and I'll look to apply that to my clients as well.
And it's interesting too, because, in my firm, we see clients that want to implement those type of structures and strategies, but they don't want to go through the hassle of going through it, right? So it's like there's this fine line of we can do this strategy, we can implement this, but you have to be on the back end ready and set up for it. I mean, I've personally seen people do really complex entity structures. You know, they have the layered up approach, they have the trust, and then I get the W-9 from Airbnb is in their personal name. It's like, why
Yeah.
go through that?
Definitely need a lot more follow through, and I think that's where we as accountants come in and help and make sure that the follow through is there and the systems are set to support it.
And one of my biggest takeaways for this is the industry, the space is so wide open, and people do need help. And I can gauge where people are at in their knowledge by the type of questions that they ask me. So I'm really excited to come out of the event. I already have some ideas about some programs and some courses and some different things that I want to do. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I think that there's a lot of people that we can help, and I hope just continue getting the word out so we can continue helping people.
And so where can our listeners find you on social media?
Yeah, on social media, you can find me on LinkedIn, Billy Withers Tax. I think my website's great too, summitats.com.
Hey, so can you tell the listeners your name and your background? And
Sure. Name is Bilal. My background, I got in real estate about 2 years ago. Kind of out of necessity, to be honest, out of COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, and I stumbled upon Bigger Pockets and started educating myself where everyone starts. I narrowed down my strategy, and then since then I've been able to get a bunch of multi-units, single-family homes, do a lot of rent-to-own strategy, primarily in Chicago, or portfolios in Chicago. And then we started getting into arbitrage, and then really enjoyed the Airbnb process, and now we're looking to, move into the luxury space in the Airbnb game.
So you started in 2020. What does your portfolio look like now?
So hopefully in 2 weeks, it should be about 26 doors. We're closing on 8 unit. Yeah. And then a couple of other multifamilies and then about 11 single family homes. So 26 doors.
So in 2 years, you go from nothing to...
Yeah, it's crazy when you're all in, man. Everything's on the line. So
I talk about going all in, man.
Yeah,
just buying something, go all in.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was. And I was like, I'm going to push this all the way, get the education I need, and just take the action after that.
So what was your biggest takeaway and your next step that you need to implement right now?
It's always growth. Growth comes with, I think it was, Michael in his presentation, he was talking about being a solopreneur and then moving
to the Freedom Code. The Freedom Code.
Yeah. So sorry. I'm at the solopreneur stage right now. I'm transitioning into the manager stage. So
we were talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
We were showing the graph and we're like, actually, somebody last night, somebody was like, she was like, yeah, did you see the Freedom Code? I was like, yeah, I think I'm like a manager or CEO. She goes, yeah, I'm over here.
Yeah.
I'm talking about that. Like,
yeah, I started as a hustler, I went all in real estate. I started with wholesaling, and I quickly realized that wholesaling wasn't my end goal. It was a means to an end. So I transitioned into a solopreneur. Now I've learned a lot of systems and stuff, and I was like, okay, now, I need to implement these systems and put people in place, slowly transitioning into this manager phase, and then hopefully, you're just skipping straight to CEO. That's what I love, but... end goal is being a CEO.
And you sat, if I might be wrong, but you sat in the VIP section, and so you were up there right in the front. So you were there for all the action. What did those conversations with people? What inspired you and kind of?
Yeah, we've been going to a lot of events and stuff, and it's just we thought that being in the VIP area is just gonna put you in in an area where there's a lot of high level people and you can have high level conversations. And so we had a couple of those. We got to speak to the speakers and stuff. So overall, yeah, it's always worth it meeting different people and we're different networks.
And where can our listeners today find you on social media?
So that's something I do have to be more active on. Wealth by Rentals is my Instagram. Hopefully I should start, becoming more active on that, and then Facebook as well.
And I guess one last thing too is Bill talked a lot about retargeting your customers, right? Because it's 7 times easier to sell something to somebody that you've already sold to. Right? What are you implementing now coming up?
It's got to be, direct mail marketing to some degree, especially in the luxury STR space. If we want to get off the platforms and we want to get into direct booking, then it's going to be email marketing and, other forms of.
Think about how much money in fees you're paying if you got a $20,000 a week property. How much are you paying in fees?
What is that, like 5%, 10%? Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah. So why give all the money when you can spend that towards your marketing, build your own platform, and then not even have to pay all that?
Yeah. And actually, Mark Simpson at the conference last year, he said, if you're on Airbnb, all you're doing is you're working for Brian Chesky at this point. So make sure you guys push direct.
That's true. Work on your direct mail marketing for sure.
Awesome. Hey, can you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so my name is Peter. I'm actually the producer for the podcast, so coming in front of the camera for once, it's kind of fun. But yeah, I have a marketing agency and looking at getting into STRs in the next year or so. Don't currently have really any real estate portfolio. So I guess my perspective is probably a little different than most of the people who've been on the pod.
And from the marketing perspective, how does it, what you learn in your agency, how do you think that can translate over to when you do get in the short-term rental space?
Yeah, I mean, I think hearing everybody talk about direct bookings was really interesting to me because, you know, if you're on Airbnb, it's just about optimizing the listing, right?
Sure.
And there's certain stuff you can do for that, obviously, but like there's a cap on what you can do.
Sure.
But if you're doing direct bookings, like sky's the limit for the type of marketing you can do. Whether you want to do organic social, you want to run paid ads on Facebook or TikTok or Google, like there's so many different options for that. And it's really interesting. I want to kind of keep an eye out and maybe even, you know, start working with some STR people to see really what can work the best and what has the most impact there.
Yeah, I think that's life-changing to me is just the idea of like funnel hacking, and because, you know, you're trying to drive people to the listing, but really you can create your own sort of process and get your leads, capture the emails like Bill talked about. Because something that he mentioned was that stood out to me was it's 7 times easier to sell something to somebody who's already bought a product or a service from you than it is to get a new client.
Yeah. And something I was thinking about too, and I don't know how accurate this is, but you know, for people who are doing Airbnbs or short-term rentals on like a smaller scale, like it might not be worth the investment into like direct bookings versus just trying to expand their portfolio. But once you hit a certain scale, if you got 20, 30, 40 properties under management, it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot by not pursuing direct bookings.
Yeah. And we've talked about this privately before, but we call it like the lady in the red dress, right? Like there's these things that could be distractions to you and, you know, not really worth your time. And how do you know, it's really hard to, because you have blinders on it. And me personally, like I still struggle with figuring out, you know, what's worth the time, where I should put my effort in, because to me, if you're not trying to build something that's sustainable and that's long-term, you're just looking for that short-term.
Yeah. And I kind of think direct bookings could potentially be that for people who are earlier on if you only got a couple of properties. But yeah, like I said, I mean, once you get to that 20, 30, 40 under management, even if they're not all yours, you know, if you're managing them, it's like you can almost create your own like hospitality brand, like, you know, try to emulate what the big hotel chains or the big, you know, vacation rental chains are doing, just on your smaller scale.
Was there any like cool people that you meet that you at the conference, just attendees of the conference that you met?
Oh, so many. Man, I have met and forgotten so many people this week. It's a little crazy, but yeah, I mean, a few people that stood out. There's this one guy, Emil, who I think he's got a couple dozen properties between ones he owns and ones he manages, and I really like his strategy because he's pursuing a very specific type of property, right? He's sticking with, if I remember our conversation correctly, he's sticking with Destin and Gulf Shores, really.
Sure.
And then trying to have a specific type of property in those locations. And that way, you know, for people who enjoy their experience at one of his short-term rentals and want to come back, they're not necessarily limited to one single unit. He's got, you know, a dozen or 2 dozen other units in that same area with a similar style that he can offer to them. And so it makes it way more accessible for repeat customers.
I didn't really think about that because it's almost, you know, he's basically selling himself and his services, and the people are just coming to his portfolio properties. It's almost like they use the analogy, you know, don't bet on the horse, but bet on the jockey. Exactly. We're going to return a meal and his portfolio, you know, because they might bring a large group one time, and then it might be just a couple traveling, but he's got a portfolio of properties that can probably suit the need.
Yeah. So that would be my advice then to short-term rental operators who are in that, you know, couple of dozen plus in their portfolio. It's like build a brand around, like, you know, what makes your vacation rentals different. You know, it's really hard to do that if you got some in the Smokies, some out in Colorado, some, you know, ski resort type ones, some beach ones. But if you can find a specific niche of short-term rentals that you perform really well in, you can provide a really uniform experience across all of them, then people are going to come back because of the experience that you're providing, not necessarily just because there's cool features at your property.
Okay. Let's shift. So let's move away from direct booking and marketing. Let's talk about what did the conference do to you from a motivational perspective and moving forward and your thoughts and your thinking?
So one of my favorite workshops was Mike Sjogren's workshop on, Wednesday morning. And to be honest, I'm not even coming at it from a boutique hotel standpoint because I'm just not at the point where I'm ready to start thinking about that yet. But the conversations that he was having about leadership and about transitioning from solopreneur to manager to CEO,
The freedom
to
code.
investor, the freedom code, right?
Yeah.
I recently made the transition from solopreneur to manager, and now I'm trying to figure out what's the next step to transitioning into CEO.
Yeah.
And so it's especially what he was talking about really making your team feel valued, and that doesn't just come from paying them well. That comes from paying them well plus all of the other things, making them feel seen and heard when they come to you with suggestions and feedback. Even little things like he mentioned, his cleaners were complaining about having to carry the vacuum up the stairs. So he put closets in on each floor with vacuums in them. Like little tiny things like that can go way further than just being the best paying in the market.
So there's a few, video vendors, video designers, video people in the space that were slugging around cameras. Where do you see video in the short-term rental space?
So I think a lot of people have kind of started to recognize the opportunity that is in building their personal brand, creating like educational content where, maybe that brings investors into your circle, and it's easier to raise funds or find deals. People are bringing you deals. Something not a lot of people are talking about is creating content around your actual short-term rental like locations. So, for example, there's a place I found in Texas. I want to say it's called Live Oaks, and it's like it's these like tiny homes. It's kind of catered towards like romantic getaways. They've got like maybe a dozen of them on this property, and then it's this cool like campground kind of feel. Absolutely gorgeous place, and they are crushing it on social media. I think they're coming up on 100,000 followers, and their direct bookings because of that are through the roof. Like I gotta imagine they're not relying on Airbnb, Vrbo at all. And so I think that's a huge opportunity. Like I said, for those investors who have hit some level of scale, particularly if you've got a niche or a specific brand of STR that you're doing. If you got a bunch of beach properties, hire a content creator to come in and make a bunch of content, not only around the properties, but also around the experiences, because you want to sell an experience, right? You're not trying to sell, oh, we got a hot tub and we got a heated pool and we've got a smoothie bar. You want to sell, hey, you're going to be able to have the time of your life with your family, and you're going to make these awesome memories, and you're never going to forget it. And, this is going to be an experience that's going to bring you and your family closer together. And that's what you want to sell. So figure out, how can we highlight that rather than just features of the property? Bring a content creator in who really knows what they're doing, and, create a bunch of social media content around it. And I think that could be huge for direct bookings.
Yeah, I've never really seen anybody talk about that. The idea of don't talk about the house, but the experience that the guest is going to come and have. Where can listeners of the podcast find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at PeterVNDR. I'm on pretty much all the other platforms. If you just look me up, same handle. And I don't post real estate content, but if you like marketing stuff, then check me out.
But that's interesting though, because real estate really is all full circle, and the short-term rental space is the biggest, goulash, lasagna, whatever you want to call it, of accounting, finance, economics, marketing, hospitality, design. It is the perfect space, and people can. So when you say it's marketing is not related to real estate, I mean, I would disagree.
No, it's definitely related. That's definitely, I would not say it's not related for sure. And it's super interesting too, just because like very few people start their careers in real estate.
Yeah, exactly right. Everybody is starting.
So they've all got their unique experiences from their previous lives.
Yeah, they're anywhere from they work a job that they don't like. They're a Big Four dropout. They dropped out of college.
Yep, that's me.
Hey, thanks for coming on the podcast. Can you tell us your name and a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. My name is Faye, and I'm a registered nurse by trade, so I still work my W-2. And I got into the short-term rental space because at a point in time in my business, which I run an assisted living facility, I felt like it was time for me to move into a different space where I don't have to worry much about staffing and all the complications with the assisted living facility. So I pivoted to short-term rentals. And last year we purchased 2. So I have one in Joshua Tree, California, and Coachella, California as well. And I have partners for both of those.
So in your background, did you kind of have like an enough is enough moment where you're like, I got to get out of this? Or like, where are you at? Like, did you have this moment where it's like, I need to get into real estate, or did it kind of just happen?
No, actually, well, getting into real estate is another whole story. I was in maternity leave for my firstborn, and after 3 months, you got to go back to work. And I'm like, there must be a different way to be able to figure out how I can get some income where I don't have, where I can prioritize my kid. And then I started doing research, got into Bigger Pockets, and, got deep into real estate. And then the first purchase that I did was a facility that I house hacked.
Right.
So I bought it as a single family home.
And when you first bought your first ones, did you have education and research when you bought them, or did you kind of just hop right in?
Yeah, no, I had to do education and research, of course. I had to get like an administrator license to run the facility. Even though I'm a nurse, that's still something that's required. And then from there, we bought the home, lived in it, doing the renovations with a little baby. And then all just came from there.
So I talked to dozens, if not hundreds, of nurses, physicians, doctors, people that work in the medical field and the healthcare field. But I've never asked the question, do you see any sort of bleed over from the medical field to the short-term rental hospitality space? Or is it really like people are really burnt out? Kind of like how I was burnt out, Big Four, working the 80, 90 hours a week, and the company would replace me by Friday. Do you see any similarities?
I mean, there are similarities, of course. Like, we talk to patients, we have that ability to be like social and feel like it relates to the short-term space too, because we got to provide great service to them.
So this is a quick podcast. Give me your biggest takeaway from the event.
Okay. Well, biggest takeaway for me, I don't really do socials.
Okay.
And with the Robinsons really is saying that, you got to be intentional. You got to use that and leverage that to be able to grow your business. I should be doing that. And
the building your brand.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also profit first. I mean, you're going to be my CPA soon. And I think I need to be implementing that and doing really better at looking into the numbers, prioritizing profit first, and being more intentional about all of that rather than, just taking on things thinking that, it's going to work out later on.
Yeah, and it was an interesting thing that our keynote speaker Mike McCallum talked about, is like the idea of paying yourself first rather than like letting okay, yeah, I made money this month, now I can use it, but it's like, no, we really need to be paying ourselves, setting some money aside to for our future. So what's kind of next for you? What are the things you're looking to implement?
Well, implementing that for sure in my business, profit first, and really trying to make sure that I open separate bank accounts and structure it the way that he was teaching us in the conference. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the first thing that I implement when I come back home. And
where can listeners of the podcast find you if they want to reach out, connect, and share their story with you?
Yeah, well, they can find me on Instagram, which I don't really have much posts, but Instagram is Invest with Faye.
Invest with Faye? Yeah. Nice. Hey, thanks for coming on the podcast today. Can you give us your name and your background?
Yep. So my name is Jonas Akeste. I'm a travel physical therapist from Chicago, which is where I met you, and I'm currently based in the Sacramento area, California.
And where are your investments at?
Yes, I own one short-term rental. It's a cabin in the Smoky Mountains, and then one long-term rental. It's a fourplex unit in Missouri and Kansas City.
What were some of your key takeaways, like big points that you enjoyed about the conference?
At the conference, there were so many people there in the same room. We're kind of like fish in a barrel. And before going to the conference, I researched all of the speakers and the big names in short-term rentals there. And I made sure when I would meet them to put myself out there and just to ask them questions based off of their content and what they're doing. And it's just an amazing time for all of us to be in the same room, because that's so rare that you see all these big names that are doing amazing things just in one room.
And what's interesting is I can really judge where somebody's knowledge is by the type of questions that they ask me. I can tell what, how in depth, especially if you're talking about tax and finance, like where their knowledge is. Like, are they baseline, are they just getting started, or is it a very complicated question? I can gauge where somebody's experience and knowledge is by the type of questions that they ask. So give us some of your, give us your one thing that you really want to implement after coming out of the conference.
Yes, so this is actually non-real estate related directly, but for this conference, I came with my girlfriend, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's very good to bring your partner with you or your wife if you're married with you. And during the conference, when they were talking about just talking about where you are with your spouse, because I feel like if you and your spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend are on the same page, you can just build well together.
Yes.
And you'll be like a train and it keeps going forward. So I've learned just to constantly communicate and to also bring someone on with you to the conference. Because before I would tell my girlfriend, hey, this is a good book, this is a good podcast, and that's good, they'll do that. But to actually bring them to a conference, they are soaking up all the knowledge that I'm soaking up as well, just so they'll be on board as well. If they're interested in that, of course.
Yeah. Where can listeners of the podcast find you?
They can find me on my Instagram. It's Jonas the PT. So YONASTHEPT.
So thanks for taking the time to come on the podcast today. Can you share with the listeners your name, your background, and kind of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Alicia Clements, and I co-own Colorado Furnished Rentals with my mom out in Colorado. We specialize in midterm rentals for people who are relocating to the area, and then my mom and I are also realtors, and so we help them buy houses once they decide they want to move to Colorado.
So can you explain your almost funnel, so to speak? Like how can you help people? Where are you helping people? Explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we provide a program called Try Before You Buy, or Live Like a Local.
Try before you buy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so people who are moving to Colorado, there's a lot of stress and chaos like in moving and a lot of moving parts. And so we kind of take the stress out of it by providing these fully furnished, flexible lease term rentals that they can stay in. So they can try out the area, see if they like the city before they decide to actually buy a house. But it also takes the pressure off them because they can, they have a place to stay while waiting for the perfect house to come on the market. So they're not getting caught up in these multiple offer situations and having to pay, over asking. They can really take their time and find the perfect house for them.
So I might have this wrong, but I'm going to do my best interpretation of it. So you help them find a home, a midterm rental, house, fire, insurance, whatever it is, and you gain their trust, and then you represent them when they go to buy their own home.
Yes, absolutely. So they stay in one of our rentals, and then they use this as their realtor.
Okay, I like that. So, how big is the portfolio size?
We have 30 doors right now.
Okay.
All single family.
Okay, and at the event, at the conference, can you give us a key takeaway? Like, what did you learn?
Some of our biggest, my mom and I's key takeaways were definitely around just business structure and like insurance and all that stuff, and making sure that you're set up properly so that you're fully covered. Because, you think like, oh, Airbnb has their $2 million insurance policy, like we're good, we're covered. But there's so much more to that. And we we definitely realized that seeing like the charts and everything of how we're supposed to properly structure just our, like legally, like our business, and then also for insurance, that was just really eye-opening. And that's...
Because you haven't been doing that.
We have not been doing that.
So what's the first thing you're going to do when you get back?
That. We're going to implement that. We took pictures of everything and like detailed notes, and we're just going to go back and make sure everything is set up properly because, we have some properties with pools or things like that, and that we could be held liable for. Yeah. And so it's every day that goes by that we don't get this set up properly is a huge risk for us.
So give me something from a mindset perspective. This conference, you probably go to other conferences. Was this one a little bit different? What did you think about this?
This one was a little bit different. So a lot of conferences, sometimes they give you like a lot of like fluff, and it's just like, oh, you should do this, but we're only going to teach you if you buy this course or things like that. Or it's just centered around like mindset and, to get you motivated, which those are great conferences as well. They're just for a different purpose. This conference was definitely very detailed of like, this is how you do it. So, we're leaving with a structured plan and actionable things that we can go implement. Yeah,
and that's the thing. I talk a lot too because I've been to conferences. I've spoken at conferences, different conferences, and of all sizes, right? As short as 150 people, 850 people, 1,100 people now, and it's like there's some conferences where it's it's motivating and it's inspiring, and that's good for depending where you're at. But then there's some people that are like, hey, just teach me how to do the thing. And I think this was a good balance of, a little bit of both. Because, it depends on where you're at. You don't just want to be the person, if you need the motivation, that's great. Find that conference. But if you're like, hey, I'm already motivated, like, let me just
Right.
do the damn thing.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, it's just like, as a business owner, like we're kind of already in that mindset, right? We're in the growth mindset. We're motivated. We're ready to go. And so it's like, yeah, like things like this are so important for us because it's like we just need to know how to do it now.
Yeah.
It's like we're already there. We're
Yeah.
already ready
Teach
to
me
take
how
action.
to do the thing.
Yeah.
Where can listeners of the podcast find you?
They can find me on Instagram at the Airbnb agent or Colorado Furnished Rentals, or on Facebook, Alicia Clements.
Do you have a Facebook group?
I do have a Facebook group. It's run by my personal life coach, Greg Kimball, and that's called the Final Percent Network.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on the podcast today. Can you share your name and your background? And
Who I am in the STR world? Well, my name's Berta Patalan. Came in from Florida. My husband and I just got into the STR world last year. We bought our first property in February, launched it in July, bought our second one in August, launched in October, and we just launched our third one last week. My background, though, is a marketing degree and fitness, in the fitness industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, group fitness and personal trainer.
Awesome. When you bought your properties, did you have self-education?
So I actually came across, I'm not sure if you know him, Michael Elefante.
Yeah.
And he had a program that I purchased.
Yeah.
And I went through that, his course or whatnot, to kind of learn the ins and outs on how to start and how to analyze properties to figure out where a good market is and all that stuff, kind of break it down. So yeah, I went through that and learned everything from him and how to get started. And I think that was probably, 2021, October 2021. And we bought our first one in, I'm so bad with dates. But anyway, yeah, I'm horrible with dates.
I forget.
Oh, I know. Well, but I went through the course and bought our first property in February of last year. So
Yeah. And I saw Michael. I met Michael.
yeah, me too. That's the first time I got to meet him in person.
He was kind of lurking in the background.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? So that investment, right? So that course or program or
Yes.
whatever.
Yep.
That investment there. How far ahead do you think you are now because of that? Of that?
I definitely wouldn't have had the tools that I needed to get started and feel confident in getting started. Like he taught the ins and outs of how to analyze, properties in market and with Price Labs and AirDNA, and he went over Guesty, how to automate things, and that really helped kind of set my mind at ease when I was getting started because I didn't want to create a job. You guys kind of talked about in the conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Different
definitely,
code.
I didn't want to create a job, and I know it's going to be hard work. I'm gonna have to, put some work into it to get the balls rolling, so it's more steady.
So this is a short podcast, so keep it really short.
Yeah.
Give me your biggest takeaway from the event. What is
My biggest takeaway, the thing that my action plan, like leaving, is going to be focusing on my layering of protection.
Okay.
So the LLCs, the insurance too. That was my biggest takeaway is listening to, I forgot his name, the lawyer. Everyone
Jeff
knows-
Evans.
Jeff, yes. That was my biggest takeaway, and he helped kind of just solidify what I thought I already knew, because you hear from all kinds of different influencers everywhere, and you're kind of like, well, which way's right, which way's wrong, like what should I do in my situation?
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to do that free consult with you guys to kind of see what's going to work best for our situation and make sure that we are protected. That's going to be my biggest thing. And then, of course, the networking. Got to meet a lot of cool people like you.
Yeah. I think that's probably one of the things that can really set investors back is not having the proper structure when they set up.
Yes.
They don't have the proper bank accounts. They don't have the proper entity structure, and then they're trying to unwind everything, and it gets really messy.
It
And
can
so
get very
they just
messy
have it
very
right from the
quick.
start.
And it was kind of nice to learn from him because he had mistakes when he started, and to really estimate how much, money we should estimate for furniture. I don't know if you know some of his story, but he had the money to put the down payment. He's like, oh, crap, I got to buy furniture. And he had to sell his truck. He has a cool story, but he had to sell his truck to furnish his first place, So it was just really inspiring. And once I got connected, a lot of the people that I got connected with that program, that course that I took, I stayed connected with and got to meet in person at this conference. And that made, so it was just really, it's really cool how the community makes you feel and kind of gets you pumped up and gives you.
What's your next step?
Definitely the protection plan. Well, we have the 3 properties. My goal is just to get those steadily rolling, make sure all my processes are in place, and
Move over on that freedom.
yes, exactly, on that chart, exactly. And then I do still have some projects that I want to do on the properties that we didn't get to because we had to move in the middle of setting up our second one. And so I was like, we just got to get this listed so we can get going.
Awesome.
So there's some things like, you know, murals and different things that I do want to put into some.
And where can listeners of the podcast find you on online?
So my name is Berta Patalan. My personal page is Berta Patalan, Patalan, _ in between. But our business that we created for our properties is Patalan Hospitality.
Whoa, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, man.
Thanks for hopping on the podcast. Can you introduce yourself and give us a little background?
Yeah, so my name is Jerusalem. I'm from California, originally from Ethiopia, but Northern California right now, Sacramento. So I was a nurse. I worked in the labor and delivery and postpartum nurse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then recently became a nurse practitioner. So yeah,
nice.
so I'm in like the urgent care setting right now.
Level up.
Yeah,
Practitioner.
exactly.
All right.
Yes.
And what is your background? Like, what makes you excited about real estate? Like, kind of like this whole thing. Like, why did you come?
Yeah, so my boyfriend, Jonas, he actually got me into it. He owns one short-term rental in the Smoky Mountains, and then he owns like a long-term rental in Camp. Yeah, in Camp.
Okay,
So
awesome.
yeah, so he's been like telling me about it, and I see a lot of like my nursing coworkers also getting into real estate, and it just seems like a really good like path to kind of take to get financial freedom.
It really is. A lot of like healthcare professionals and protect people. They work these really gruesome hours and they're exhausted and they're looking for a way out to get out. And real estate's a great. I mean, my firm deals with tons of doctors and healthcare professionals, nurses. So what was the biggest takeaway? If you had a key takeaway from the conference, I mean, there's so many things, but like, what was your biggest?
Yeah, I guess my biggest takeaway is, I guess like the importance of networking. Like there were so many great speakers, and I learned so much, and I took a lot of notes and everything. But just like the importance of like actually like going and like shaking people's hands and actually meeting people, networking with them. I think that goes a long way in real estate and just learning from people. And then something that you said actually that I really liked was during like the panel. I think you were mentioning just like really be clear about like what you're good at, and then make sure like you hone in on that, and then kind of like export everything else to like somebody else, like delegate things. So yeah, I really like that. I think that could go not only like in real estate, but in like in your life and in nursing too. So
I always try to say like, find out what your top 10% at in the world, and focus and go all in on that because you have that ability to do that. And if you focus all your time and attention at what you're the best at in the world, it's going to multiply.
Exactly.
And that's really what the world needs. Is it needs everybody's got the thing that they're good at, and the world needs those people doing that thing. And that's just gonna make the world a better place.
Exactly.
What's your first step when you get back home? What are you gonna implement?
Yeah, I think my first step is I think just getting more credit cards, because I was honestly like into like paying everything off, like not like they ran exactly. I would I was like, I'm gonna pay off my student loans, do everything. So I think now just maybe like building my credit a little bit more. I mean, I think I did have a good credit score, but building my credit, getting a little bit more credit cards, and starting my journey.
Yeah, awesome. So thanks for coming on the podcast. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about your background, your name and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Sarah, and I live in San Diego. And my background, I studied environmental engineering in college and was an engineer for 6 years. And then I transitioned into the e-commerce space, and now I'm going full-time real estate investor. I have 2 long-term rentals and 2 short-term rentals, and I'm looking to buy my 3rd short-term rental this year.
Okay, so you went to school for engineering. What type of engineering was it?
Environmental.
Okay. And so explain like a little your career. Like, when did you know you wanted to get into e-commerce or something different, kind of?
Yeah, so I decided that I wanted to transition out. I got my real estate license, but I wasn't exactly ready to go full-time real estate agent and be commission-based only.
Sure.
So I transitioned into e-commerce because it sounded interesting. I knew some people in the space, and I took on a business development role where I was able to
do the sales side, but also have a salary and commissions. And from there, I built up my real estate portfolio.
It's 2 long terms, 2 short terms. Where are they? Where are the short terms at?
Oh, yeah. The short terms are both in San Diego. One is in Pacific Beach, and the other one is by San Diego State.
Okay. And at the conference, was there a big takeaway? Was there a key takeaway?
Yes. So a couple key takeaways. One was getting your entity structure in place and making sure you have that protection so that you protect your assets individually. And another key takeaway was putting systems and processes in place to free up your time.
Yeah.
Which my main goal is financial freedom. So.
And that's been a big one. A lot of reoccurring is actually the entity structuring and the time freedom. It's been a common trait. So I enjoyed the freedom, or he called it the freedom code, or I forget exactly the name of it.
Oh.
But the template where it showed, okay, you go from hustler to CEO.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, where are you at?
I'm still in the hustler stage, and working my way to the CEO portion. And I have a lot to do with, setting up. I'd like to set up a VA, and getting a lot of the systems and processes in place. So those are some of my action items for when I go home.
So setting up the systems. And what about the marketing side? Did you learn anything about how to attract guests to your place, how to get them to rebook your place, how to?
Yeah, absolutely. So setting up an Instagram, and then, decorating so they have Instagrammable areas in the property, and then they'll tag your place on Instagram.
Nice. And last thing, how do you see the engineering background that you have, and now how it plays into real estate and what's going on? Is there any similarities, any?
A little bit. So I did, one of my long terms is an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, which I built, and I went through the construction process for that. So, that was good for me to have the engineering background going through that process for planning and design and all that.
And any takeaways from the conference on on a motivation perspective, where you can see yourself and be?
Yeah. So I learned that I should be working towards my 10-year goal plan and taking action on getting there now rather than later.
So figure out what that goal is and try to work backwards to.
Correct. Yes.
Cool. Where can the listeners of the podcast find you?
I typically like to use Instagram. So my Instagram's Sarah Tooley with 2 Y's at the end. SARAHTULEYY.
All right, Ryan. So we've heard from a bunch of people about their main takeaways from the conference, everything like that, but we haven't heard yet from you. So what would you say was your biggest takeaway or something you learned from the conference?
So one of the things that I kind of have the self-realization of is seeing how big I'm able to impact people. And I can film a podcast and it takes me 15 minutes to do, and I can put that out in the world. And the traction that I get when people come to me and say, this podcast on this saved me 20 grand, 30 grand, you just helped me do this. And it's like, I just met you, I don't even know. And just seeing the traction and the volume and how I can pour into people and how I can leverage and amplify myself, and all from my own house, it's really insane how I'm able to kind of change people's lives and educate investors and real estate business owners. And so that's been really cool to kind of understand my consumer sentiment and understand what are the problems that they're going through. And these events are great because I talk to investors from all different backgrounds. So it gives me ideas of future podcasts, future products, future services. As far as some of the speakers, I mean, it was awesome. So we had, 1,100 people, title sponsor, STR Insights. We had tons of vendors there. Wouldn't have been able to do it with the vendors. First responders, active duty military, healthcare professionals, give a shout out to them. Some of the key things from the speakers, I think, I always like Bill. Bill's talk about, the marketing and the retargeting your guests, because it's 7 times easier to sell something to somebody that's already bought a product from you, and learning from that. And Michael Strogren with the Freedom Code, the Financial Freedom Code, where are you at? Because ideally, that was a perfect chart of just showing, okay, here's the different stages of where you're at. And me personally, I still think I'm in the manager/CEO, and I still need to strive to get to that shareholder level.
What did you think of What did you think of Bill's talk the second day about planning for retirement? Like, is that something you've given much thought to before?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to kind of, before you get started in something, you know, like, why are you getting started in the first place? What do you want out of it? And I think when I first started this, I'd never imagined that it would grow to become what it has, and I really haven't I really need to do a better job of figuring out what I want that goal to be and then working back towards it, because if you don't, in my opinion, if you don't map out what that is, I think the goalpost can change.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I got here, what do I do now? It's like,
Yeah.
it's like in Forrest Gump when he's running and he just stops running. He's like, all right, I think I'll go home then. But it's, yeah, if you don't like define what do you want out of this business and like what do you want, what is your purpose? And I think, to me, my purpose is to change family trees, and I want to help, you know, not the everyday person, but the person in their family that's going to change their family tree. And so how I can, you know, provide services, how I can provide content and podcasts and live events and stuff. So
Yeah.
define my purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people like getting into real estate, you know, they start and maybe they're doing real estate on the side while they're still doing their W-2 job.
Yeah.
And like they've got such a short time horizon. Like the only thing they're fixated on is, when am I going to be able to go full time? Where am I getting that next deal? When, you know, Alex Hormozy talks about this all the time, like looking at a longer time horizon.
Yeah.
Not the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years even, but the next 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
Like, how do I make an impact over that amount of time? And I think that it's good in two ways, because number one, it takes the pressure off of what you're doing right now. Like, I don't need to see results like right now. I know that I'm building something that can impact in the future. And then number two, it's just, you know, putting that longer time horizon on things. It really gives you a sense of perspective on, you know, every overnight success was 20 years in the making.
Mm-hmm. I like to use an analogy that I like to shoot a lot of pool, and I'm not focused on I'm focused on the shot at hand, but I'm actually more worried about where's my cue ball going to land after the shot, so I could set myself up for the next shot, the next opportunity.
Yeah.
So it was an amazing event. Like I said, we did this last year, Nashville, 850 people. This year we kind of scaled it up, 1,100 people, and looking forward to the opportunities. You know, hopefully next year we'll pack this thing 5,000 people.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Super stoked to have had everybody on the show. Really cool to hear all the different perspectives from people in their real estate journeys, different spots in their real estate journeys. You know, this event was absolutely insane. Just to see like the breadth of people coming to this event. People like myself who don't even have their first STR up yet. And then people like, you know, Bill, Mike Sjogren. I mean, Mike Sjogren's a freaking beast, man. And then I'm talking to people who just, you know, they walk around like everyday people, but they secretly got 40, 50 Airbnbs in their portfolio.
Yeah.
You would never know. So yeah, super grateful to Bill and Mike for putting this event on. Super grateful to all the sponsors and all the speakers for making this possible, and can't wait for next year.
Peace.
I'm still